All right, welcome everybody to the Escape America Now members only webinar about living in Chile under threat. It was just sort of a follow-up webinar to the two public webinars we gave. And I'm recording it here. Actually, a few members have shown up for the live version. Maybe more will come later, but this will be posted also to the members forum and room so that other members who didn't get to attend live will be able to come. Now, I know they're probably missing some important college football or something. I guess baseball's over, so there might be attracted to some sporting event today that keeps them away. But there are some interesting details that we can add to what's been happening here in Chile. And I intend to give a brief introduction of what I know about these things, and then to talk about some of the issues I've mentioned here on the website and the blog entry, to what's going on here in Chile, specifically when we talk about whether or not we should stay, whether we should go, stay and fight, flee, if you prefer those terminologies. And if we stay and fight, what are the parameters? What are we dealing with? I've already covered some of this before, and I'm not going to take away from anything, especially the last seminar from what I gave, but there are some other details that we need to be aware of that we may have missed, or a lot of people may have missed in the news. I ended up spending a number of hours today and last night just trying to catch up on the latest. And it's not easy to get the latest, at least it hasn't been for me. And I'm also trusting news services and semi-leftist agencies for figures, which I always consider to be quite dubious, doubtful in every way. But I don't have much else to work with. I think probably most of it's accurate, but I mentioned that as a disclaimer that we may have some variation over the numbers that I've been able to receive. One positive thing out of all this before I start is because we've already discussed and looked at Chile being in flames, and the other one with all the disaster and the rioting going on in Chile, and what do we do? There has been some interesting, good humanitarian work, and I'm not going to show the videos this time because we don't know why the second video was banned from YouTube. I've never had a video of my life banned from YouTube or anywhere. It might have been because we showed the bodies of some of the hoodlums or the scoundrels that did some arson at different buildings and were burned. Their bodies were just, ash crusts or whatever they're called after they did the deed, and the Carabineros filmed it and I showed it. That might have been too violent, and there might have been other things, might have been some other kind of, who knows, some kind of social media. So I'm not going to show much. I don't think I'm going to show any social media today, and even though there's plenty of it to back up and show what we're doing. What I will show is some things that are on news services and on websites. Again, not a whole lot, but shouldn't be anything to drive anybody to think this is a violent or violence promoting broadcast, or anyway, who knows? Maybe they just hate the fact that we're libertarians here and they're communists or leftists or something else. I don't know. Have no idea. YouTube did not respond why they banned our second video. But to me, it's kind of a silly joke. And Joe mentions here, censorship by big tech is a mark of honor today. Apparently so. So I'm finally honored after all this time. Somebody told me that it's when we're in Spanish, which most of my videos are, we don't have that problem. They just don't censor in Spanish that much, which is fine. That's great. But in English, apparently they have people snooping around and trying to find reason to ban videos. Anyway, well, one of the nice things that you see throughout all this process is the people who are standing up in civil society to stop this aggression that we face, this plunder, this looting, the vandalism and graffiti, the window breaking, the robbing, looting of the stores, and arson. And a lot of these people are now wearing the yellow vest. It's kind of funny. The yellow vest came into Chilean law or legislation a number of years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, where Michelle Bachelet obligated everybody who's driving a vehicle to carry one of these under their seat. Of course, we looked at it as just a maneuver to help one of her buddies who happened to have this company that produced these yellow vests to make a lot of money, and I'm sure that's the case. But a lot of people have these yellow vests that they purchase, sometimes as much as 5,000 pesos or about $7 or $8, and sometimes much less than that after the market got sort of saturated with them. But people are putting on these yellow vests, trying to identify themselves as different than the looters and communists and criminals, and even the run-of-the-mill protesters from the center left who are out in the streets. And they're there to show their support not only for the military, but also to defend, if possible, the shops from being looted or burned down. And it's fun to watch the social media videos. Some of them have pictures of people. I think I may have shown this one last time. We're running out of stores, and these people with the yellow vests are there beating them. And as they run out and showing their disapproval, others are armed with hammers besides sticks and other things like that. And it's too bad they're not armed with guns, because it's far more effective to simply shoot people that are trying to destroy private property and kill people than it is to try to beat them with a stick. And sometimes the looters are very mean when somebody stands up to them. I saw social media the other day where 6 of them jumped the guy who was complaining about them looting a pharmacy. It was a pharmacy. And they just kicked him and punched him and beat him up. All, 5 or 6 of them. I think there was 4 to begin with, and another couple joined. They just beat the guy up. So that's sad that does happen. But yet there are people who are willing to take a stand in civil society, and this is, of course, a very libertarian position. We see the state as failing in all its capacities, including national defense or civil defense. It's not a good organization in general, and even for those who are minarchists have to concur with that, because I tend to be a minarchist in the mornings, although less so lately, and in the evening just a libertarian anarchist, because I don't see any use for the state pretty much, most of the time anyway. And that's my seesaw position I'm stating publicly in case anybody has a question about that. But yeah, when you see the state fail, you need to know that the private individuals could do a better job of defense, just like they did in the LA riots in 1992 and otherwise. And it could be the same here in Chile if we had better laws for allowing more people to have guns and other kinds of guns besides just shotguns and pistols too. But that is another issue for another day, and something important though that we need to emphasize as libertarians here, that we are in favor of gun rights and people owning firearms in order to defend their own property and defend other people. We're not into aggression in any way, but when people are aggressing us, then we don't have any problem with defending ourselves as libertarians. In fact, libertarians are the great champions of using arms. So it's unfortunate that these yellow jacketed people here don't have much chance. There's also been a lot of other aggression against civilians besides just what has been seen in the media as the masses, these hordes move through the streets. And one of the great victims has been the firemen. I think I actually can share the screen and show a picture of some of this. Let me back up a minute, see if I can do that. I should just double check with you. Joe, were you able to start the recording of this also? Just send me a quick note if you can while I'm trying to share the screen here. Okay, great. Thank you, Joe, for confirming. Okay, now I'm sharing the screen. I've got a bunch of stuff to show, like this one, the Metro we'll get to in just a minute. This says here, attacks on against bomberos, which are the firemen, during the protests. The never before happening wickedness of aggressing or attacking these good boys. Chilean firemen are volunteers. They do it because, like all firemen, they're strange people. They like fire. They like to deal with it. They like to put it out. They get a thrill from it. And having studied firemen for so many years as part of my professional work in building regulation, that's all I can conclude about them. They're very nice people, dedicated, great people, generally speaking. But there's something about them that has a fascination with fire. And so if you pay them or not, they're still going to go do the same work. Curiously, they even in Chile buy their own uniforms, so that it's a negative price. You're going to go be a fireman, you're going to lose a lot of sleep, you're going to have to pay a lot of money to go buy all this uniform and other equipment, and you're not going to receive any kind of salary. There are a few paid administrative positions like secretaries, I think, but very little. They operate on donations, and also they get a certain quota from the municipalities, maybe even the federal government here. But they're going out and fire, they're risking their lives, and these communists are setting fires. I don't think it's the vandals that are doing the arson. It doesn't make sense for somebody who wants to loot a store to vandalize the store and then burn it down. Anyway, maybe there's a reason for it. I can't think of one. It seems like a lot of extra work to go through, and not only that, a lot of extra jail time if they happen to get caught. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think that communists are doing this because they want to destroy capitalist business. I think it's their baby. And maybe there's some other non-communist party members that are part of what they call the Frente Amplio here, which is almost the same thing as communists, just a different name. And they're attacking these guys. They're trying to put out fires, and these guys will just start, beating them up or throwing rocks at them or sticks or, whatever, while they're trying to fight the fire. So that's something that hasn't been really emphasized a lot, and it should be, because it's not just the cops and the military that suffer, but also other people like these carabineros. So there are some good sides to what's going on in Chile. We see that there is this kind of resistance groups that spring up spontaneously in the market to protect business, protect lives, people collectively acting against communists and against these criminals to stop doing what's happening in Chile. And as libertarians, we need to really take advantage of this, right? We need to write articles about this. We need to say what we like is common defense, and what we need is guns. And with those two things, we really don't need the military on the streets or the carabineros. Thank you very much. They're fine. We're not against them in any way, but I'm not speaking against any of those people or those professions, but they're hamstrung. They completely think that they fear that they're going to go to jail if they violate the human rights of some criminal or communist. And when I repeat myself, I say those two words, because there's these agencies that'll be here whistleblowing on what they do, and they don't want to have a problem. But they don't mind watching while private civilians beat up these people or whatever it takes to stop them from committing crimes. And so in a civil society, that actually works out pretty well. Let's go back and talk about the metro. I've got several things to share here today. This I thought was very interesting when I got this map. It was in El Mercurio today, and I think it's been there every day for a while. And the metro system in Santiago, the metro system on the other parts of the country, like in Concepcion, the bio train, and there's a little train that runs from like Talca to Constitucion on the coast. Those are unaffected. Also, the north-south train that leaves Santiago and goes down to Rancagua and then goes to Curicó and Talca was also unaffected by all of this so far. There was some relatively minor damage in Concepcion and some of the stations, but they impeded traffic a little bit. I think they cut off, as I understand, some of the turnstiles you could go through. People had to wait a little bit longer, but basically the trains always functioned. That wasn't the same in Valparaiso, and the Merval, where we live, it's only one line. It goes from the port of Valparaiso inland after it goes through Viña, and in Viña, turning directly east, it ends up in La Mache, which has then some buses that reach out as far as Omue or Quillota or La Cruz, quite a ways inland. In fact, right near Ruta 5 or Route 5. The main highway running north-south in Chile. But on that line, there was a lot of damage done. There was damage done to the beautiful glass encasement there in Viña del Mar down by the plaza, from what I understand. I didn't actually take pictures of it, even though I could have at some point gone down there and done so. But it didn't stop the station from operating there. The one right after, though, closer to the beach, Miramar, was closed, and it was closed until October 23rd, as I understand it, and then it was reopened. Two other metro stops, one was in Quillota, Quilpue, which is inland from Viña del Mar. It was closed until the 27th. It was badly damaged, and so there was no stopping there, nobody getting on and off. And there was also one that was damaged at Bella Vista, in Valparaiso. That's the center kind of government power, where you have the regional government there, the main tax headquarters is there for the SII, and the immigration service people. So the foreigners that come here to get visas all can use that metro stop. And there are other kinds of businesses and things there. And as far as I know, it is open now, but I didn't actually see an announcement of that. It was closed until October 29th for sure. but it may have opened again on the 30th, and that's kind of what I'm thinking happened. But I didn't get a confirmation, so it may be that I'm mistaken about that, and it's still actually closed. I've not ridden on the metro in a while to know whether or not it is. So there was that damage in Valparaiso, Viña area, but it's nothing compared to what happened in Santiago, let's face it. And the Santiago metro system is a fabulous system. It may not be something that I would desire to build as a libertarian and say, well, I like this sort of inefficient provision of goods and services provided by states instead of the market. I don't agree, but I do agree that the thing worked. And even though it was expensive and the fares are relatively high compared to what the market could have done, because it's linked to the state and has this Corfo funding and stuff like that. A lot of cronies are getting benefits one way or another. Then it's inefficient. And indeed, every metro stop, if you think about it as a libertarian, the placement of that metro stop was very important, because if you happen to be the serendipitous owner of land that can be built there, an apartment build or something right next to a metro stop in the future, the value of your land goes up fantastically. So don't think that these metro stops were just assigned arbitrarily or out of some kind of efficiency. They weren't always that way, at least not, I would say even most of them probably were not. There was some tip off, somebody making money on a building project or something else that happened, like some kind of services near the metro line, especially if it's a metro line that happens to have one that connects to another metro line. So it ends up being 2 out of 1. And if we look at the Chilean, the Santiago metro system, we can see it's a very modern metro system. And I've been on many metros in the world, in the US and many in Europe and Hong Kong. I don't think it comes quite to Hong Kong standards, but it certainly beats most of Europe and probably everywhere I've seen in the US. And there are some exceptions in Europe, like Turin, a new metro system. They're really, really nice, small metro, but a very good quality type system. And Chile had that until this was destroyed by these people here. Notice that each one of these dots, for those that are watching here, I have to circle one here at the top. If you can see that, this is a metro station. That's where somebody can get off or on. And where they cross, like here, is a place what they call combinación, where you can transfer from one line to the other for free. And so there's a number of transfer spots, but you'll also notice that there's a lot of open space here. And the reason for the open space is, according to the latest statistics, out of the 136 metro stops, that's these little dots that we've circled here, these little dots, there were 136 of those on October the 16th or 17th functioning well. 118 of those were damaged or some outright destroyed. That's huge. And it wasn't spontaneous, folks. There's no way. It was a coordinated attack, although we don't have any single person taking responsibility. The social media is howling all over the place, where the Sao Paulo Forum, or perhaps just the local communists, or both, were in charge of doing this thing. And that's why they were hit every 5-10 minutes. It's like they went to one metro station after the next to get to the next spot. But look how many spots are just wide open. Check out the spot that I'm circling here. There are no metro stops open on that spot. And how about line 5 or any of these here? Just look at some of these here, just wide open spots. There are some missing here in downtown Santiago. There's only one. I think Salvador is still actually closed. It says it's not. Maybe it's open now. In here, there are like 8 metro stops, or maybe 6. Maybe I'm exaggerating. There's a lot, and there's only one open. I mean, they're all been trashed in there, seriously. Also, as you can see, if I call up the screen and you have a chance to look at the other, let me close this up here. This is what the metro looked like before the attacks. It's not quite the same size. I know, I'm sorry about that. I don't know if I can increase it here. Let me double check and see if that's possible. I don't know if I can. But at any rate, suffice it to say, look at some major differences. For instance, did you notice that, let me annotate the screen again, see if I can change my pen color a little bit. We'll try pink, maybe a little bit wider brush. All of this line going to Puente Alto, look at it. It does not exist today. Isn't that amazing? It does not exist. Well, there's something there. There's the hull of the thing that's been burned down and destroyed, and it can be repaired in, many, over probably several years from what it sounds like. It may be faster, I don't know, but it doesn't exist right now. That's also the same with the light blue line, the 4A. Look at this. It's gone. It's not here. It's not on the map. It's a normal as part of the metro. And look here at all the metro stops on line 5. How many have we got now? 2 down here at this part. You see the point? Up here in the downtown area where I talked about Salvador and all that earlier, look how many are not there that were there before. Or how about this side over here, line 1 and line 5? Where is it? Here it is. It's not there. And neither is this part of line 5 over here. It's tremendously damaged, to say the least. And all of these extra metro stops and things like that that were up here before are simply gone. All of those stops are just destroyed. Look how many stops there were up here that are gone now, just completely gone. So yeah, that's pretty telling, I think. It gives you an idea still of what the problems are. They've been working to try to restore the metro here after all the damage, and still have not been able to come close to finishing it all. In total, the paper that I read today showed that there were 25 stations burned out of these 118 that were damaged. Remember, only 18 were left untouched out of all that. 7 were completely burned. I mean, just wasted. Let's take a look at what I mean by wasted, so you get a couple of ideas here. Let's see. Let me clear the screen first, if possible. Oh, well, before we talk about the destruction, by the way, let me turn the annotate back on. These were all the proposed lines that they were going to add right here that I'm highlighting. They had planned to put 3 more full lines. I can't draw very well with my mouse. And this one out here, I guess it's really 4 lines. It only goes to line 9. Let's see, so 7, 8, 9. I don't know where the 4th one is. Maybe one of them is going to be the extension. This might have a different name up here. And then they were also going to add extra sections like this down here of the metro. So they have expansion plans to make this the largest metro and most efficient metro system in America, period, whether it's South or North America, as I understand it. It was supposed to be a model for the world. And although it's expensive and it's government, again, monopolized, things I don't like, I have to appreciate it for what it is. It's a lot of sardine cans, but it did function very well as far as metros go in the world. Metros generally lose money. They're just, like some of the bread that's tossed from the circus or ringleaders of the state to pacify the people. But as far as metros go in the world, Chile was actually one of the better ones. And this is what we're suffering. And here's what it looks like, a few of the pictures of damage. I hope YouTube won't ban me for showing a picture that's in the news. It's a big risk, I realize. Let's see if we can clear our screen again. These are just a couple of bomberos, firemen, a few of them here, inside one metro station, just to give you an idea what it looked like after it was burned. It's phenomenal, the destruction. And there are 25 stations burned like this, and 7 completely, just kind of beyond recognition type of burn. In addition to that, there were, in all of these places, all the ATM machines were looted and stolen, for all the money out. And there are quite a few in metro. I mean, you're talking about a lot of money that was made. People aren't talking about that, but I don't know how much money was actually made by knocking over anywhere from 2 to 15 ATM machines in these stations. But they didn't just let the money burn. They broke into them, trashed them, grabbed the money, and ran. As far as I can tell, in every case, they were smart communists financing their craft or whoever these people were. So that's interesting to note also. In addition to that, the figure is now no longer $300 million US dollars. It's risen to $380 million to fix. And that price might go up. And of course, it's a monopolized sort of service, but they are getting cheap labor from a lot of immigrants. They've created a lot of jobs, even though they destroyed so many by the communists doing their other kinds of crafts and eliminating businesses. A lot of menial tasks and glass makers, semi-professionals or semi-skilled people too, are having to come in now and repair things. So that's the cost, the current cost. There were, let's see, they said losses in 41 stations. This loss, sorry, this 380 million only counts 41 of the 118 stations that were damaged. The other stations were damaged much less. So let's say there were 41 really badly damaged. Well, 7 were just burned to the ground, burned to a crisp. Well, those are the worst. But then there was another group of 34 stations that were really badly damaged. And then the rest of them leading up to the other 118. So what's that? Another 77 more or less. I think that's right. 77 stations. They were really, damaged, but lightly compared to the others. And so the cost of that is not included in the 380 million people. It reminds me of the same thing as when we drive down through Santiago right now or other places, you see some buildings, some old buildings with rocks thrown through every window, literally broke every window in the place, some of these old, beautiful buildings. Well, the old Keynesian idea in economics, well, this is a good thing because what this means is we can now simply employ more glaziers, more glass producers, more trucks to transport glass. And so people are working, having jobs. The problem with this idea, like Haslick pointed out in economics in one lesson, is it takes a look only at the short term and not at the long term, and at the effects that only one little group might be benefited, not at the effects of the entire group of people living in a particular society and how they might be benefited or harmed. And when we destroy our wealth, when we destroy things that we have that are useful in making our lives better, and then have to replace it, it's damaging to us because instead of buying something new with this money, we have to use money, current wealth, to replace and get back to the same levels we were before. And so in the paper, one paper I read very astutely, they pointed out, for instance, this $380 million is the same cost as putting up a 368-bed hospital with full specialties, pediatric, cancer, whatever it might be. Talking about hiring all the doctors that you need for this and having all the equipment and staff that you need. So when you put it in those terms, you understand how big the loss really was when you're talking about this, right? The same is true as you could have built with the same money in Chile, using a labor cost here, 2 complete soccer stadiums. Wow, which hold, 80,000 people each. That's the cost of damage that we could have had those other 2 new things, 2 new stadiums if we really wanted those, or 1 really fabulous hospital. And now we don't get either because it's been damaged. Here's talking about the attacks on the bomberos. I think I did that. We looked at that before. Here's another picture of maybe without, because it's on the news, we won't get banned. But look how, let's see. This is just, I'm going to plug off the Spanish there in case somebody doesn't understand. There were a total of, 10 trains burned, and another 6 were totally vandalized in the system. And so this shows you some of the pictures of the trains suffering and the metro, just to give you a bird's eye view. And this is only one segment of the destruction. It's massive in the transportation system. And it doesn't even touch the buses that were burned. There weren't as many as the metro, but there were still a lot of buses burned. Look at the ATMs there that were looted too, and you'll see that. And this is them just trying to get through and get out of there with the being burned as it was. Yeah, this sign says, Chile, wake up. Yeah, Chile, wake up. Look what you've got on your hands here. Don't take these communists lightly. They're a very serious problem, and they're provoking all of this kind of destruction. Not just rampant criminals. There may be some who are vandals that enjoy doing this, but the great majority of it was not that. It was politically motivated by these communists or Frente Amplia people, or Amplitude that have done this kind of stuff, breaking in, as I show here. All right, well, anyway, we're not going to watch the whole newscast here. You get the idea. That's what it looks like at the Metro in Santiago. I think I've got one more thing to show too about it here. Oh, this is about we'll come back to this. Let me go back to the room here, our chat, and see if there's any questions, and also see if there's other things that we want to add here. Just a moment. Okay, there we are. Joe says, I consider Chile's metro comparable to Singapore's. Yeah, I've been in Singapore's metro, and you're right, it is similar. The one in Turin and also the one in Hong Kong are really, really modern. And especially the one in Turin was just built in, well, depending on the line, I think it's all in the last 10 or 15 years. So it's quite nice. And if you look at line 6 in Santiago, before all this happened, that's an example of it. But some people were concerned about line 6 because there's no human operator at all. And there are people who actually got their arm caught in the door and stuff and had problems because of that. So it's kind of dangerous, people have complained about. But I'd have to agree, especially with the new lines, 3 and 6, they are definitely more comparable to other places in the world. YouTube and Google, or equals Google, why use them? Well, I guess there are only 3 choices when we do Zoomcast. One is Facebook. In fact, I'll tell you what it says. Oh, it doesn't tell me here anymore. It's Facebook, YouTube, and I think there's one other. And I'm not sure what to do. Okay, anyway, let's go on here to the next item. Just to talk a bit about some of these other things that are happening in the country, and I'll be a little briefer with some of them than others, just to give you the catch up on the data. San Fernando and the south had some rioting just recently, right off kilometer 144 south of Route 5, big group of people protesting. Some of it was violent and bad. So it's still continuing. It doesn't matter if Piñera lifted the state of emergency or any of that. They still want to impeach him and move him out. In Chile, just so you understand, if they do impeach Piñera in the House or the Cámara de Diputados, the deputies, as you might say here, it goes to the Senate to be approved or investigated. And in 20 days, they can depose Piñera. And if that happens, the president of the Senate, which is a guy named Quintana, he's kind of a social democrat from the PPD party, the same one that Ricardo Lagos was in. But he's definitely pretty good leftist. He's not a communist, but he's somewhere between there and a Bernie Sanders. So I'd say he's worse than Bernie Sanders. And he would become president, and he'd have to call for immediate elections. I think he has up to something like 120 days. So they can do a lot of damage in that time. And then the question is, would the left be able to win the presidential election? They're hoping that they can. I think the silver lining in all this damage we're talking about today is they probably won't be able to, depending on who is put up. If it's Jose Antonio Cast and he's too much to the right, then yes, there's a chance because the center will be offended. But it's possible that the left can be kept out because of all the evil that they've done, especially the communists. But it is an issue that we have to be aware of. If Piñera were to die in office or to have a stroke and become physically incapacitated, then the Minister of Interior, Blumel, the new guy, he would become president. But it's different if he's impeached. So it's a different process than in America or other places in the world. You should be aware of that. That's just how it works here. There are also a great number of people in Plaza Italia, which is the Baquedano area of Santiago, right between Providencia and downtown Santiago, where those 2 hotels were burned that I mentioned before. There was another 20,000 people there, and that was still going on. We also had massive protests in Viña and in Valparaiso. That's why I believe here, if I can find it, here it is. Again, I hope showing this kind of news review won't be a problem. I want you to notice there's a bus about to enter in the turnaround lane here in the middle of this picture. And he's going to turn the wrong way and go against traffic. So I'm going to go ahead and crank this up. You see him turning against traffic right now? Let me increase that. He just turned against traffic. And now this is the route between Viña and Valparaiso. And all these guys are trying to get out of the way. It's because they couldn't get around the marchers and actually drive down the coast and go to Valparaiso from Viña. So this bus driver just took off, and look at all these people going, whoa, and there's the marchers. You see, that's why he couldn't get through. There were supposedly 100,000 of them the other day. I believe it was last weekend. And recently there were thousands more. I don't know how many, 2, 3, 4,000, making the 10 or 15 kilometer jaunt there to from Viña to Valparaiso. But look at that bus. He's just still continuing to go. He's running all the risks he can. Crazy. That kind of stuff happens when you have the distortions caused by the communists doing things. There's really not much more you can say. It is a terrible situation.